A developing headline tonight involving Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito. Just days after images emerged showing an upside-down American flag flying outside his home for several days after January 6th. Tonight, the new report on a second flag, this time at his beach house. Here's our Chief Justice correspondent, Pierre Thomas now.
Just days after the nation saw an image of an upside-down flag outside of the home of Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito in the days after January 6th, a symbol of the Stop the Steal movement, a new photo tonight raising yet more questions. The New York Times publishing images of a pine tree flag outside of Alito's New Jersey beach home last summer, with the words, "Appeal to Heaven." Like the upside-down flag, the pine tree flag was carried by some pro-Trump supporters on January 6th as the Capitol was attacked. Tonight, it's unclear who allegedly placed the flag and what kind of statement was being made. The flag, which dates back to the Revolutionary War, has also been associated with Christian nationalism. Supreme Court justices are supposed to avoid the appearance of political bias. And Democrats argue Alito has a conflict of interest and should recuse himself from 2 January.
We are just getting some reports from Spain that a building has collapsed on the beach in Palma de Majorca, which of course is very popular with British tourist makers, killing at least 2 people, we're told, and injuring at least 12 in the tourism hotspot. This is the first picture that we've had on social media. You can see it's actually a low building, and we're being told that it's a restaurant. The Spanish media reporting that it's a restaurant, the restaurant part of this hotel that has collapsed. 2 people killed. The Spanish services are saying around 12 to 14 injuries of different severity. We'll obviously bring you more on that when we have it. Building collapse there in Majorca, in a resort that is very popular with British tourists in Palma de Majorca.
Another Russian general has been arrested as what appears to be a purge of the military continues. Vadim Shamarin, the deputy chief of general staff, has appeared in court accused of taking bribes. The lieutenant general is the 4th senior official to be arrested since April. Earlier this month, President Putin appointed a new defense minister. This was an economist who was appointed in place of Sergei Shoigu, who had been in post for 12 years. The move was widely seen as an attempt by the Kremlin to boost the army's efficiency and tackle corruption. The Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov denied, though, that a purge was underway. So let's speak to our Russia editor, Steve Rosenberg, who joins us now from Moscow. What do you think is going on, Steve?
Yeah, a question we often ask about Russia. You know, when one senior military official gets arrested, that's interesting. But we've had 4 top defence figures arrested on fraud charges in the last month. And that seems to be a pattern. Or to put it another way, it seems to be a purge. You know, today we saw Vadim Shamarin being arrested, but amongst the other officials who've been arrested over the last few weeks, a deputy defense minister, also the head of the personnel department, directorate of the Russian Defense Ministry. So these are senior officials. And as you mentioned, Lucy, what we've also seen recently was a reshuffle. Vladimir Putin getting rid of his defense minister of 12 years, Sergei Shoigu, or moving him to another job and putting in his place an economist, a technocrat, Andrei Belousov, someone that I think the Kremlin believes will make the Russian military more efficient and try to fight corruption there.
Dmitry Peskov denies that a purge is underway, Steve. So what's the official Kremlin response or reason for why this is happening?
Yeah, Mr. Peskov today denied there was any campaign. I think that's the word he used. He said that the fight against corruption is ongoing in Russia. But there is a big irony, I think, about all of this. And it has to do with Yevgeny Prigozhin. Remember him, the Wagner chief, the head of the Wagner paramilitary group. Last year, Mr. Prigozhin publicly criticised the Russian military leadership. Sergei Shoigu, the defense minister at the time, the chief of the general staff, Valery Gerasimov, he accused the Russian military leadership of corruption, of incompetence regarding the war in Ukraine. It was a very public spat, and it ended with the Wagner mutiny, the Wagner group mutinying and marching on Moscow. Vladimir Putin sided with his military chiefs. And in the end, Mr. Prigozhin lost this battle with Shoigu and Gerasimov. He lost his life 2 months later. However, 1 year later, what we're seeing is Vladimir Putin, the Kremlin, apparently taking measures against the Russian military leadership. Despite what Mr. Peskov says, there does appear to be some kind of purge going on there. And that says something very important, I think, about Vladimir Putin. He doesn't like being seen to act under pressure. So if you tell him, if you order him, get rid of a minister, get rid of a general, that's not going to happen. But he acts when he believes the time is right. And I think what we're seeing now is the Kremlin acting and the Kremlin realizing that some measures have to be taken to make the military more efficient and to fight corruption.
So interesting. Steve, also always good to see you. Thanks for joining us. Our Russia editor there, Steve Rosenberg.
Most of us got a solicitation email this morning from the former President of the United States saying that the Justice Department had authorization to kill him during the Mar-a-Lago raid. First, can you give us some clarification on that particular point that he's making and whether or not deadly force is authorized in other interventions, including the search of Mr. Biden's residence and office? And the second question is...
Can I do one at a time? Okay. On that one, that allegation is false, and it is extremely dangerous. The document that is being referred to in the allegation is the Justice Department's standard policy limiting the use of force. As the FBI advises, it is part of the standard operations plan.
Detective Gillis should have turned on his body-worn camera, but did not. His failure to do so is a violation of the LMPD policy on uniforms and equipment.
Activating body-worn cameras is critically important for our police department to have evidence, to maintain the community's trust, to be transparent. We have to respect the legal process, and that's what we are going to do, and we're going to let that play out. We want to move forward. Mr. Scheffler has made it clear that he wants to be moved forward, and I know that everyone else involved at LMPD wants to move forward.
Breaking news, the Supreme Court is preserving a Republican-held South Carolina congressional district, rejecting a lower court ruling that said changes in the district discriminated against black voters. ABC senior Washington reporter Devin Dwyer joins me with more on that decision. Devin, this is a big one on the issue of racial gerrymandering. So what sticks out to you from this ruling?
Yeah, the Supreme Court long ago, Diane, has ruled that racial gerrymandering, the predominating use of race when drawing our election maps, is unconstitutional. But today, a challenge to the first congressional district, it's the swing district around Charleston, Hilton Head Island in South Carolina, which was redrawn after the 2020 census, was not a racial gerrymander. This was a 6-3 decision, breaking along ideological lines with the conservatives, breaking with the liberals. Justice Samuel Alito said that the lower courts Race, which had accused Republicans in South Carolina of bleaching the district of 30,000 black voters, using race as a factor to move those Democrats out. Alito said that conclusion was erroneous. He reversed it. But this is a huge disappointment, Diane, to plaintiffs in this case. Taiwan Scott, a member of the Gullah community on Hilton Head Island, told me last year this will have a big impact on what it's like to live there. Take a listen.
The way the maps are drawn, it's taking our opportunity to elect a representative away from us. Someone who can speak up on behalf of the outstanding historical concerns that we're still faced with. And I think it's deliberate of how it was drawn.
The court today, Diane, saying that it was deliberate politically, not using race. It means the 1st District will remain solidly Republican in the 2024 election. Justice Elena Kagan dissented, said this decision, Diane, will invite now more states to use race when drawing their maps, although this decision did not create a sweeping new standard around this issue of racial gerrymandering. This was a heavily fact-intensive decision in South Carolina, but a setback nonetheless for those who live on those islands, as you heard there.
Devin, we're also still waiting some other key rulings, including former President Trump's claim of absolute presidential immunity that's before the Supreme Court. So any idea when the court will rule on some of those other large cases?
We're not told in advance, Diane, but there are more than a dozen major decisions expected from the Supreme Court in the next 5 weeks. It's a lot to pack in, not just whether President Trump can be prosecuted, but whether the abortion pill can remain widely available, whether women in emergency situations should get access to abortion, whether